Sam, how you going?
Oh, Kate, I'm very, very happy to be talking to you today.
Oh, me too. And we decided to jump on today and talk about what happened in the previous episode that we recorded together. And the episode was talking specifically about juggling a business as a mother, you being a mother of five children and me being a mother of two boys. Yours are, what are the age of yours again, Sam?
So, my eldest is 26 next month, and youngest is 13 next month.
Big spread there. And my two
Yeah.
are 8 and 11. So we started a lot later in life. I was 37 when I had Jack,
Mm.
39 when I had Leo. So both you and I have been raising children while trying to build a business from the ground up, while supporting our husbands to have their full-time career or business.
Yes. I love that you say, I love that you say, while we're supporting them in their full time work and careers,
Mm-hmm.
because they would say they're supporting us,
Mm,
wouldn't they?
yes,
Because the
that's so
perception is
interesting.
that, yeah, the perception is that the first pillar of support is financial.
Yes. And that's the whole discussion we had last time. And we are umming and ahhing about whether to publish that episode. Firstly, because for whatever reason, the audio didn't come out very well, and we're wondering whether it's salvageable. But secondly, because the whole conversation made us both really uncomfortable, because this topic of being a mother while growing a business and supporting a partner who probably looks at it as though they're supporting us. And like you say, because they're as and we use this term breadwinner, but it's such an outdated concept, isn't it? But this idea that they currently are the major breadwinner in the sense that they have a full-time business, like your husband running the automotive business, full-time, multi-million-dollar business. And my husband has a full-time professional career as an employee. And yeah, like you say, in their perspective, they are supporting us financially as we grow our businesses. And while you and I are contributing financially significantly to our families, we are not the major breadwinner. And that comes down to the fact that we are limited by time.
All this is true, Kate. And the, I remember saying to you after we recorded last time how incredibly uncomfortable I felt about the whole conversation because it is so topical. And the thing is that we're talking about our own perspective.
Mm-hmm.
We're not speaking for everybody and certainly not speaking about everybody. And I think that's
Yes.
really important distinction to make. But everything is predicated on the fact that money comes first.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
My belief is, and in particular, this has been so highlighted during and post COVID, that money isn't everything. And as human beings, we're actually looking for so much more. And that's really throwing everything off kilter because
Mm.
where is that leaving the breadwinner?
Mm. Yeah. 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 It's certainly, as we've said, our perspective is mothers growing a business, and I imagine that the majority of people who listen to us on this podcast are mothers or have been mothers, and even those who are not mothers will also get massive value from listening to what we have to share. But I feel upfront in this episode series, because that is so heavily our experience, it plays such a large role in our ability to grow businesses, that it needs to be talked about, because there are so many limitations when you are a mother growing a business, and the bulk of the domestic load still falls on your shoulders. And while both you and I have husbands that help out, and mine is very hands-on, the fact remains that he needs to leave the house at 7:30 in the morning and he's not back until 5 or 6 at night. And so during that whole day, I am responsible for getting them to school, for organising the logistics, getting them after school, making sure they're fed, getting them to the afternoon after school activities. And I find that it's that constant multitasking and the disruption of what you're doing that is most exhausting and also most inefficient when you're trying to make progress in a business.
Oh,
Whereas,
that
yeah,
barrier, yes.
whereas our
Yeah,
husbands get to focus full all day on their job or their business and therefore can make better progress and earn more money in that time.
yeah. Look, my experience, Kate, is slightly different, but in so many ways it's the same. I get really frustrated with my poor husband just because I know that he's the owner of the business, and I sit here and I'm like, you can plan your day however you want because you're not beholden to anybody really. Whereas as an employee, you're required to turn up at a certain time and you're required to stay until a certain time. My frustration is you get to design your day. And this is, this is what we're telling all the women that we're working with, isn't it, Kate? You've
Yeah.
got to make yourself happy and you've got to create this work-life balance and all of those things that make business really, really good and really fun. And then I'm stuck with the pickups and the drop-offs and I'm the one on the end of the phone when the kids are sick at school and all of those things and, sports days and all of that. And I'm like, you're a business owner. You can take the day off just as easily as I can.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know you've had that conversation with your husband.
Yes, I have.
But nothing changes in reality.
No, and I think that's his personality.
Yeah.
That sense of responsibility he has and that desire to have that routine.
Yeah.
I think that's where they talk, there's a lot of talk out there about the mindset that you have as an entrepreneur, and you've got to shift yourself out of the employee mindset and into the business owner mindset. And I do believe my husband very much sits in the employee mindset of showing up, staying all day, and then knocking off at the end of the day.
Yeah. And that's all because that's all he's ever known, isn't it? It's different to the modern day sort of entrepreneur who can carve their day around the needs of the family or, it's a different generation, I suppose. Yeah.
Yes, it is a very, very traditional mindset. And I think women are on the forefront of changing that mindset about viewing business ownership.
Yeah. And I think you and I are both very empathetic, as are all women, towards that burden that the man feels when he has that pressure to be the breadwinner, and that's why they work really hard and they do what they have to do, because that is an enormous burden to carry. However, until we as women are able to, given, and I have this conversation all the time with my husband, give me more time and I will grow faster. I will grow the business faster. So I am growing now and it's going well. But if you want faster growth, more money, I need to carve out more time in the week. And at the moment, I've only really got 5 hours a day, realistically, of uninterrupted time. And you can do a lot in that time. But obviously, the more time you have, the more effective you can be, isn't it? And I think,
Definitely.
you and I are of that generation where it is changing. And I just want to read out this quote that I sent to you the other day, which was from an Instagram page called Mums Behaving Badly. And it said, there is an entire generation of women who are drowning because they were raised with traditional gender roles while being empowered to be independent. These women still take on the majority of house duties while simultaneously killing it in the workplace, and they're tired. And that spoke to you and I. So tired. And you and I grew up where we did have the traditional gender roles. My father was the major breadwinner. My mum supported his business, funnily enough. And what were your parental roles?
Yeah. So look, my dad was super entrepreneurial. He always had a job, but he also had a side hustle. So in that respect, he was entrepreneurial. And it's interesting that all of the children, I'm one of 5, and all of us own our own businesses, all of us.
It's interesting how that role modelling is so strong, isn't it?
Definitely. And look, my mum was mostly when I was growing up, my mum was stay-at-home mum.
Yeah.
I knew growing up that is not what I wanted to be.
And yet, because you did grow up with that as your role model, like this quote says, you were raised with traditional gender roles while being empowered to be independent, and you have always been independent. But look at how your role split is happening now in your life, where you are doing the majority of the household duties. You are killing it in business, but you are doing the bulk of the domestic load, and therefore you're really tired.
I'm really tired. Hey, I remember when I was young, before I ever had children, and I love my mum so much. She's not with us anymore, but I always admired her mothering skills, her parenting skills. And I always thought to myself, if ever I was a mum, I want to be just like her. At my age now, there are certain parts of that wish that I had to be just like her. And now I'm like, maybe I don't want to be that much like her, because all the housework and the cooking and cleaning, that's not the thing that brightens my day. Working with other women, that's the spark that I get.
Yeah. And that's what keeps driving you forward, because you love that work. Yeah. And when you get to empower another woman.
Here. Yeah, I wish my mum was still here so I could ask her how she felt about all the domestic work she did. And because she did have part-time jobs. When I got to high school, she did start working part-time, and she worked before she had children. So she wasn't someone who never worked. So being from a totally different generation, I'd be interested. But yes, we grew up, and, you know, I feel like I was the generation that started to feel the turn of the tide, where we started to comprehend that we could do things, and we started to be allowed to do things. But yes, nobody took anything off our plate. They just piled more onto it, more options and more things to achieve. They didn't take anything off us.
Yeah. And our husbands, I'm sure, would argue that they do a lot, and it compared to what our fathers did, and that's true, definitely. Yeah. But it's still, and even the stats show, you know, because you and I've researched this and presented on these topics before, and the data shows that 75% of women still carry the bulk, and I think it's more, actually. I'd have to look that up, but carry the actually, maybe it's the 75% of the domestic load is what the majority of women are still doing. So there are women out there who are the main breadwinners, and the husbands are stay at home or support the woman in her full-time career, but that's still by far the minority. And even my husband says, or if he looks around the office at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, or any time during the day, the majority of people he's working with have wives who are not working full-time or are not working at all, and the men are the major breadwinners. And that's in 2023, and that's still the norm for so many people. So, yeah, and I think the reason you and I felt so uncomfortable after the last episode we did, which may or may not get released because the audio was so bad, but because you and I were speaking from this perspective, and we know it's not the reality for a lot of women. So this is still, for a lot of women, for they're choosing not to have children, and kudos to them for making that choice, you know, and B, there's many women who would dearly have loved to have had children and have not been able to. And that's another really heartbreaking thing that you and I are both very compassionate towards as well.
Yes.
And then you've got mothers who just love being mothers and don't, you know, and don't necessarily need or want to work, and that's a beautiful choice as well. And you've got the full-time the mothers that work full time, and they're having to deal as an employee, and they're having to deal with all the logistics of that, and their husbands have to really step up then. And then there's people like you and I who, and the majority of clients that we coach who are mothers and have chosen to grow a business on the side. And that's really because we are just representing only one sort of reality. It's our reality, and we talk about it a lot. That's why we thought we should just really dive deep into that for this episode.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. All choices should be celebrated. No one should ever be criticised for their choices. But yes, we are speaking from our own personal experience, and that's filled with children and housework and trying to climb out of that hole.
Yeah. And I think, part of us wanting to do this podcast was sharing the strategies and the tactics that have helped us to get where we are, where there's sustainable profit, where you're feeling the reward and the fulfillment of running your own business. And that's the part that you and I are really excited about, is saying, hey, if there's any of you out there, we understand the struggle is real. Yes, you have to go at 3 o'clock to pick up the kids, or yes, you'll spend the entire afternoon at the soccer pitch, or whatever it may be. But it doesn't mean that you can't still work smarter, and still build a profitable business and have scalable income and all of those good things. And that's sort of, I think, what you and I love sharing, but it's within the context of this situation of motherhood where you have a lot of real constraints.
Definitely. And I think the first barrier that I try to help women break down is the expected timeline that we operate on for business growth, for starting and growing a business. That timeline was built by men who could devote their full day to working on a business.
Exactly.
We don't operate on the same timeline. And that's the first thing I think I really want people to understand, that our timeline is much longer because we don't have the hours.
Exactly. Yeah, it's coming back to that time thing again, isn't it? And we talk a lot about the 5 stage or 6 stages of business growth, where it's the hockey stick, where you've got, dollars above the line, negative dollars below the line, and that valley of death between startup and break even, where you're putting money, time, resources, energy into the business, but you're not seeing the returns of that yet in terms of profit, and how hard that initial phase is. And just managing the expectations of people, of women's, that is the journey. So you can't skip the valley of death unless you have an angel investor, or a really someone who's willing to invest lots of money in your business to get it off the ground. You have to go through that valley of death. So understanding what's required to get through, to get to the other side, is really important. And like you said, manage those expectations around how long it's going to take and what is going to be required, because we get so many women saying, yep, I want to make 100,000 within 12 months. And you think, and you're starting from scratch. Yes. So, okay. So let's just take a look at that. And it is always a conversation of managing expectations, because people promise that on the internet. But you and I know now from years of experience of coaching women that is just not the reality.
No. And I think, Kate, it's taken me quite some time to really settle into so many parts of my business, and get the clarity around who I'm working with and what I really want to focus on and how I want to deliver value, all of those things. It took me time to reach that, and that's because I had to figure out a lot of stuff internally. Because for me, it's been 26 years of wearing all of those different labels or all of those different hats, going from someone who is single in their early 20s, and then we start attaching ourselves to things. We get married, we have children, we give up our careers, and we fall deeper into that domestic bliss. It's very hard to figure out and remember who you were, because you do change so much doing all of that. And then you have to really do the work to figure out who you were what you wanted, and how much of that you're still carrying with you.
And I think what you're saying is, in order to really thrive in business, you have to be super clear about who you are and how you want to serve and what you're here to contribute. Is that right?
That is exactly. How did you articulate that so much better than I did?
Yeah, and I think that's something that a lot of employees don't necessarily have to do, that soul searching that we have to do as business owners, because you do a job, and yes, obviously there's some roles that really push you to do the inner work. But the life of a business owner, you are forced to do the inner work whether you like it or not, because your business is a reflection of you. It's a reflection of your thoughts, your beliefs, your mindset. And unless you look inwards and excavate what those beliefs or identity, your sense of identity, all of those things, it's really difficult to thrive. And we see that a lot with clients that we coach, haven't we, over the years, that those who don't have a solid sense of identity, they tend to flip-flop around or pivot quickly or change direction. There's no real stability in the business growth, and they can't really get traction. So knowing who you are at that deep level, like both you and I, since we've known each other over the last 3 or 4 years.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, we've done a lot of soul searching, both voluntarily and forced through hardship. It's the hardship as a business owner that makes you dig deep and do the reflection, isn't it?
Yeah. It's so interesting that we're so determined to avoid failure, but that is such a beautiful part of the process because that's where you do so much learning about who you are.
Yeah, and who you are not, which,
yes.
Yeah, I think for you and I has been a huge part of the journey. Is it's one thing to really get a sense of who you are, and for myself personally, stepping out of engineering 10 years ago, I had to do so much soul searching to figure out who I am and what on earth am I going to do and how am I going to spend the rest of my professional career, or at least what are those next steps. But then, so that initial trying to figure out who am I, but then there's that journey of growing your business and realizing clearly who you are not. And it's
Definitely.
that contrast, I think, that is so important. And while you can sort of only figure out who you're not by trying stuff and failing at it badly, or just having a really bad experience with it and thinking, no, that's not me and that's not how I want to do business. And that's just as important as all the good stuff, if not more, isn't it?
Yeah, I would hesitate to be following in anyone's footsteps who's never put one wrong.
Does that person even exist?
No, but social media will have you believing that she does.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. And actually, when you and I were discussing this podcast, that was another big thing that was really driving us. We were just both saying there are so many false promises out there about get to 6 figures in 6 months, or scale your business to 7 figures. All these promises of impossible targets that, sure, in the rare cases they do happen, but the reality of starting a business from scratch, which is the sort of target market you and I work in, up to profit and scale. The reality is that just takes time, and there's layers, and it's patience, and it's perseverance, and it's grit, and it's getting up every time you fall down. And there's no silver bullet, there's no magic fix that gets you across the valley of death miraculously from one side to the other. And even startups that have large amounts of capital funding or angel investment also fail and burn money through bad mistakes and so on. So it's not just that you need to have money behind you, it's that you need to fail, you need to try stuff and learn and fail, you need to have good strategies. So you do need to follow in the footsteps of someone who's been there before and take their advice if it feels intuitively right to you. That's another whole conversation, isn't it? But I think the fact that you and I were just like, all these poor women are falling prey to these expensive quick fixes. And they come to us usually when they've burned lots and lots of money on programs that promised the world and didn't deliver.
Yeah. Even the programs, I've got my feed at the moment. It's very full of people that are selling templates and it's fill in the blank templates. And those are wonderful if you already are really clear on a lot of things. But they won't work for you if you don't know truly what the answers are to those blank parts in the template.
That's so true. Yeah. And that's the clarity you and I were talking about, which takes time to, and I've worked with clients that even, it's a constant evolution, isn't it? And I mean,
Absolutely.
I'm in my, ninth year of business now, and I'm on about my fourth, reinvention. Iteration.
Reincarnation.
Because as you said, we grow, we change, and our business keeps growing and changing to reflect who we are and how we want to serve. And that clarity takes time and it evolves. And you can't just fill out a template without that real clarity of who you are and how you want to serve. And that's the bit that I think where you and I get most satisfaction from, is helping women with that clarity.
Yeah. I couldn't even tell you how many times I've been in a coaching session, and it would have been the same with you in the programs that we've run together, where we've sat in front of women and they've finally admitted what their true passion is, that they've, even women that have been running businesses and have come to us for help to grow it. And in that process, realise that business is not for them. Their passion lies elsewhere. The self-realisation people have about who they are and getting people to do the work to figure out what they really want. Because, even that, we're so tricked into thinking that we need stuff and we need to look a certain way and we need to have all the right things on the bookcase behind you,
I know. Yeah. I mean, and you and I are very much, we've given up on perfection, haven't we? I mean, I'm doing house renovations at the moment. I'm in a very ugly temporary room. There's no bookcase in my recording, and yet I show up and we do it because, like we've said before, if you wait for things to be perfect, they never get done.
No, and I've decided that I'm going to show up as me every single time, perfect or not, because what my background looks like or how I'm dressed, I mean, I don't want people to be going, oh God, I can't look at her, I don't want it to be that bad. But the point is, am I able to help you?
Exactly.
Am I saying what you need to hear? Those are the really important things in what we do, Kate.
That's right. That's so true. Yeah. Yeah, it's the message we have for people. It's how we can help. It's the same for our clients, isn't it? And that's what you and I talk about a lot. Is sure, it's what I think, and I do love, and I've been through a personal branding experience myself with the wonderful Emma Mungavin, and she helped me restyle and rebrand, and it's been an amazing journey. But I think the outcome of that is not to have the Insta lifestyle and look polished and perfect. It's to feel really authentic and aligned in yourself, so that you can then show up with a message that resonates with the people you want to attract. And that's what it's about for me. And life does feel better, as Emma always says, when you love the clothes you're in. Even if it's just a plain shirt that I'm wearing right now, it's a color that I love and I feel really good in it. And therefore I feel aligned and I'm comfortable with sharing my message. And you're the same. You're wearing a beautiful pink top that you obviously feel good in.
My face is going, I've got the heater on in here. It's getting a bit toasty. But you're absolutely right, Kate. That's what I mean. Emma's amazing, those branding sessions. If I was able to come to Perth, I would absolutely book in with Emma.
Mm.
But it's not about what everyone else thinks you look like.
Yes,
It's how you feel about yourself.
exactly. Yeah. And therefore, that feeling of alignment, and we talk about that word a lot, but it all comes down to that, doesn't it? And you and I have experienced firsthand how difficult it is if you're out of alignment with your authentic self or your values. If that
Oh, yes.
misalignment, yeah, if there's any misalignment between what you're saying and doing um, and how you're feeling inside, that translates into, in my experience, lack of flow in your business. So if there's misalignment inside, there's little flow in your business. Whereas when you can find, and what do we mean by alignment? We just mean that you're in full integrity or in full coherence with your treasured values. And knowing what those values are for yourself is another. Going back to what you were saying, you need to know yourself as a business owner. Knowing what your really deeply held values are is so critical, because your business just does not flourish if you're not in line with them.
No, I think we both had those sales conversations where, you might be trying out a script, or maybe you're being advised about how to sell, things like that. And I think for me, that experience of trying to sell when you're not in alignment, that's when I've personally felt it the most. And
Mm.
sales don't work if you're uncomfortable. That's translating.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah. And you and I, over the years, have done all the courses and all the things, and and
We
I've
have.
and you've seen me. I've we used to teach selling. We'd do whole masterclasses and whole programs around selling with scripts, because first-time business owners want a script of some kind to guide them through the process of selling. So that is helpful, but you get to the point where you realize that the script isn't how you want to speak to the person. It's something doesn't feel right about that script or that conversation. And if that's the case, the person in front of you picks up on it and it's repellent.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whereas when you feel good about what you're offering, it feels in full alignment, and you're just basically saying to the person in front of you, this is how I can help you. If that feels aligned for you right now, then we can work together. Then it takes the whole stress out of the conversation.
And that's the big difference between pushy sales and serving people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my belief, and I know it's yours too, is that when you pushy sales is not sustainable. It's transactional, it's short term, but it's not going to give you repeat clients and brand advocates that love who you are and what you do. It's all about building the relationship, and that client is only going to stick with you if it's aligned with them and they get great value from from working with you, and they want to stay connected and they want to keep working with you. That's where the profit comes into the business, rather than if you do a pushy sales tactic, you get the money in the door, but they're out of alignment with it and they don't get the results they want. They end up not liking your brand because they feel like they were roped into it. And so pushy sales tactics don't work long term, because they're long-term. Great business comes when your clients feel aligned with what you do, you feel aligned with what you do, and they stick around and they stay with you for a long, long time because they just love what you do.
Yes. Yeah.
So, and I know we've run out of time. You've got school
I
pickup,
feel
haven't you,
like we've
Sam?
been, I know, the whole topic of the podcast, I have to go and do school pickup. I
And
feel like we've gone around the world.
but this, interestingly, you got a text message from your husband a half an hour ago
Yes.
saying,
Yeah, I did. He
and what
can't
did the
pick up.
message say?
he's not going to make it back in time for school pickup.
Mm-hmm. And so therefore...
That was it. There wasn't even, can you pick up or anything. I'm not going to make it back.
Yeah. And therefore the expectation is that you will be free to do pickup.
Yes. Well,
And
that is the expectation every day. And I hope he doesn't listen to this episode, Kate.
But even if he does, he'll understand the struggle.
Helping me out if he does pick up. He's helping me.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the mindset I think we are looking to shift, because it's the age-old rut we get into where finally you have a day where you can work an hour or two extra and make some progress on some big milestones, but no, he can't make it, so therefore you're picking up, and that's just expected to be okay. And look, that's just the reality, and, you know, it's not the end of the world, but this is the struggle we face daily. It's that constant cutting into our time, the precious time we need to do what we need to do to grow.
Hey, I'm going to be really interested to see, you know, in another 20 to 30 years' time, when the 20, late teen, early 20-year-olds that don't have all those responsibilities just yet. I'll be interested in 30 years' time to see how things have changed.
Me too. It is changing.
It is, but because of the constraints we have, we are developing some amazing skills at being more productive with the time we've got, and so many other things that we wouldn't develop if we weren't under that kind of pressure.
True. Yes.
So we're getting good.
Oh, our productivity levels are off the charts, I think. When we have time to get stuff done, we get stuff done, because we are growing and we're doing good. And helping other women to do the same. It's true. We're breeding some kind of super creatures, these mothers that are growing business at the same time. Yeah. Anyway, I know you have to go, Sam, so go pick up your kidlets, and we shall touch base on another episode very soon.
Thanks, Kate. Great conversation today.
Yeah, loved it too.